Shit's fire.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another live Pendergast podcast on this beautiful Willie Wednesday. That's what we always call it, Brad, right? The Willie Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, there you go, right? It's, man, I have such a special treat for everyone tonight. It's an absolute honor to sit down with the legend, Brad the Bullet Baker. But before we get into this episode, it is sponsored by Next Level Financial. Take control of your financial future. Get your complimentary financial analysis today. And Brad, I tell everybody this, at least on the road racing side of things, don't buy an off-the-rack suit because it's not going to fit you correctly. When you have a leather suit that does not fit you correctly, man, it causes all kinds of issues on the bike. And I'm sure, you starting out growing up, getting into flat tracking, your first pair of leathers were probably too big in some areas, smaller in other areas. But then as you got your first custom suit, you realize what a huge difference it made, right? Being comfortable on the bike. Well, you stowing it in like this and getting on the gas with the foot out, cocking it sideways for all the road races out there. It's kind of the same. My recommendation, bisontrack.com. Tasha and Robert are some of the most amazing people you're ever going to meet in your life. It's 2025, people. Love yourself, treat yourself, get you a full custom suit. Trust me, you will thank me and Rob later. So bisontrack.com. But Brad, I have been so excited. My wife and everybody at work and all my friends are like, dude, just stop talking about Brad Baker. We get it, right? I'm just, dude, listen, it's I've been such a fan of yours for a long time. It's an absolute honor to sit down and have this conversation, bro. So what's up, Brad? Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks a lot, Chris. I really appreciate it, man. Now it's I've watched a couple of your podcasts now, dude, so far, and you do a great job, man. And yeah, it's fun to do these things, so I appreciate it big time.
Yeah, man. Listen, again, the honor is all mine, and I appreciate you watching the podcast, man. It's an absolute honor. But Brad, dude, listen, we got so much to talk about. First question, like I always ask my friends, is where did your journey start with two wheels?
Yeah, it's a long story. Let's start from the beginning. So yeah, I started riding motorcycles when I was 5. I grew up in Southwest Washington State. Probably this most rural area of Washington, at least the west side of Washington, down in the southeast corner. My dad, he was a racer when he was younger. Flat track, hare scrambles, raced some cars. So he was the one that got my brother and I into it. My older brother Scott, he's 3 years older than me. He raced too, still races. So I remember my dad coming home. My dad drove log truck, in the Pacific Northwest. Logging is probably the biggest industry there is out there. But so he drove log truck, and I remember him coming home one day and say, "Hey, what would you think about riding a motorcycle? You want to, ride a motorcycle?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I remember it was the next day because he was hauling logs, and there was this PW50. It had the yellow and black livery on it, and like the number one, like the white number one, like that was like one of the normal paint schemes or graphic schemes that came on him at that time, and it was on the side of the road on whatever haul he was on. But so yeah, he put it on the chain deck of his log truck, stopped and picked it up, on his way home from work. And I still remember him pulling in the driveway and that PW50 being strapped down on the chain deck of his log truck. And it wasn't too much longer later, I was sitting on it and took off down into the field, which not too long after that 10-acre field turned into a 10-acre racetrack. But I went down towards the river. We lived like right on a river. It's a beautiful piece of property that's been in the family for over 100 years now. But went down to the river and spun out in the sand, got hung up in the sand. And my dad had to come down and rescue me, get me out of the sand, fire the thing back up. And then I get back up like top in the field, and I'm going up like that access trail road that goes up to like the driveway up to the house. And my dad had a big rock crusher, and it was like because he was working at the gravel quarry across the river, and the piece of the rock crusher was out in the field. And last minute, I don't know why I decided to take a hard right, but I decided to take a hard right, and it was way too late, and I just barely like skimmed past this rock crusher. But it was like, man, I was lucky I didn't like take off my leg or something, because I mean, this is a big piece of iron, and ended up like sticking the side of the dang bike into like the corner of this angle iron on this rock crusher, and ended up breaking off the air screw. And so we had to spend the rest of the day just like that. Was like in the first like less than 5 minutes of riding a motorcycle, and I've already broken anything. And so that's where it started. But I rode around the property for good portion of half a year or so, just messing around. And then my dad finally took me to my first race at a track called Oakwood Arena, which is where like myself, JD Beach, the Halberts, Jacob Lehman, my brother, pretty much everybody on the west side of Washington all cut their teeth at this little short track that was actually an old airplane hangar that was turned into a rodeo grounds. And this place had like old insulation falling down from the ceiling, little holes in the ceiling, whereas like literally on the racetrack there'd be like little puddles, little slick spots out on the racetrack, because the ceiling wasn't sealed up all the way. And they had rodeos there, so like the dirt was probably 50% cow shit and the rest was dirt, but so that's where we cut our teeth. But that was like, that was when I was 6 when I went to my first race. And then really just after that we started going every single weekend. And my brother started the race a little bit after I did. He wasn't as interested in it right away, but when I started racing, then he's like, well, if he's going to race, I got to race. So Scott got into it. And then after my brother and I were both going, my dad got the itch again, and he went and bought a couple bull tacos that were leaned out and underneath some trees and an old, moss rotten out lean-to. And he brought those things home and completely pulled them apart and restored them. And, for about the first 3-4 years of my brother racing, my dad raced as well. So it was kind of a family affair between my mom, my dad, my brother, and I all going to the races. And there was just a bunch of tracks on the West Coast, and even in this Washington State period. Like, it was a really, really good era back then. There was just a lot of local races and local series to race. And went to, I guess, my first West Coast Amateur Nationals in 2000. I traveled to Lodi for the first time, Lodi, California. That's a famous place for like Chris Carr, where he started racing, Toby Jorgensen, and a bunch of racers, started out. Went down there with the Halbert family. We traveled down in the Cool Bus. That was anybody in the flat track world knows the Cool Bus. It was the Halberts had a school bus that was makeshift motorhome race hauler. And so I went to my first time to Lodi, my first time to the Amateur Nationals in Indianapolis and Springfield, Illinois. We all traveled with the Halberts and then the Cool Bus, which was quite the experience. We'll just put it at that. But some great memories. And like Jethro, God bless his soul, one of my good friends and one of my childhood racing heroes. It was really, really, really cool being able to spend that time with him and then have those memories looking back. But yeah, that's kind of the start of it. What kind of sprung everything forward. And going to those Amateur Nationals. Like in meeting all the different riders and getting and to experience that level of competition at an early age really sparked a fire big time.
Oh, I guarantee it, man. What a journey. That's what I love about, motorcycle racing in general. I don't care if it's flat track, dirt bikes, road racing, whatever it is. It starts with a dad, a son, or a daughter, right? For that love and that passion. And then it just turns into an unexpected journey, right? It's
Exactly.
It's awesome. So speaking of your brother, right? Were you guys super competitive growing up as kids, racing on riding around on little dirt bikes?
Oh yeah, big time. We were yeah. It was. I think that's why big part of like what pushed us to be better is that, we were, constantly competing against each other as kids, and I think, me, especially as a younger brother, it seems like the younger brother always, and all the brother situations, it's like, there's been some situations with the older brother's faster, but it's like, I think like the younger brother always wants to be better than the bigger brother, it's like it just, and I just know that not that obviously rooted for my brother, and he was 3 age groups ahead of me too, which is also helpful for me because I got to learn from him, and also, he always had, the next stage bigger bike than me. So it was like, and then we had the field that turned into a racetrack, like a really, really nice racetrack. And I had that ace in my pocket as well, that my dad was a heavy equipment operator, former racer, where he was, savvy with things as well, to where having, the next stage bigger bike, before I was able to legally get on it and have my brother to push me in the chase after it, it definitely helped for sure.
Oh, 100%, man. At what stage, being young and racing, did you have that dream of this is what I want to do? This right here is absolutely what I want to do.
I think it was 2002 Amateur Nationals in Springfield. The first time I went to the Amateur Nationals in Springfield, it was I was on an 80 at the time. I guess it would have been 8, 9 years old. But that was a year that went with the Halberts, and Jethro and I, we spent that whole trip together. Had this like little, like, I forget what it was, like they're like the little Honda scooters. Which I forget. My buddy was telling me what they were the other day, but it basically had a PW50 engine in it, but it was one where you could like swing your leg in between, and then it had a little basket on the front of it. They're super cool little scooters. But anyhow, like Jethro and I, we just tore up the whole Springfield, Illinois fairgrounds on that thing. But Jethro was a pro sport that year, and that was the year that they had a Grand National at the short track during the Amateur Nationals, which was super cool because then we're able to witness and see the best riders in the world, and so I remember Jethro and I hopped the fence, snuck into the racetrack, so we didn't have to buy a ticket, and we watched Nicky Hayden win that night. He won the short track that night, and so it was and it's pretty cool because Jethro ended up being become a national number 69 a couple years later, and but I think watching that night and just seeing being able to witness the top level of the sport while I'm already there competing for an amateur national championship, I was like, man, I want to do what those guys are doing. This is what I want to do. So I think that's when that was the time where it really sank in the most,
Dude, that's amazing to see. The legend Nicky Hayden when at the short track. It's and if my memory serves right too, they were the first and the only 3 brothers to win at flat track racing in the same race. Yeah.
2003 Springfield TT. Yeah. That was awesome. That was super cool. Yeah, it's like not too many people. Yeah, nobody will ever do that again. Like that's incredible.
It is. And so, how did you come up with your number 6? Where did that come from?
So actually, it was kind of funny. A lot of my numbers that I ran when I was a kid were just because that motorcycle came with that number on it, and we were rolling on a budget, so it was like I didn't have enough money to like buy a new set of numbers, and like I think I was just simple enough, like 6, sure, that'll work, But actually, it was a bike that we bought from Mickey Fay. Mickey was a legend back in the day too, and I'm good friends with his sons Mickey and Marty. But so Mickey was number 6 for a while, and we bought this ATK 50, and it came with the number 6 on it, and so I was like, well, I just ran it for a while, and then I bought a 60, or my dad bought a 60, more like it. Mom and dad bought a 60, and that came with number 17 on it. So then I was number 17 for a while, and actually 17 stuck with me all the way through until I was pro. I was number 17 AM. That was back when we ran letters, so I ran 17 basically through my the rest of my amateur days. But I had a number one on my bike quite a bit. It was either 1NW or 1N or one in the state. There wasn't too many years as an amateur where I didn't have a number one on my bike.
Again, absolute legend. I mean, there's, and I tell people, Brad, all the time, it's motorcycles pick us. We don't choose motorcycles, right? We see them, we fall in love with them, but then we don't know. When we ride them as a young kid, we don't realize such a passion it's going to be for us as we, get older. Well, now I call it getting younger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've absolutely changed my life, and all the memories. It's just I always call it our beautiful circus. And growing up, man, you've raced against JD Beach, of course, Slammin' Sammy, right? Talk us about them and the challenges that pushed you to elevate your game, racing against those two legends too, as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, JD and I, we probably still some of the best battles I ever had on a motorcycle were, JD and I, just him and I, whether it been on 85s or the 250 days, especially at Castle Rock TT in the Pacific Northwest is a legendary track. And yeah, we were just being glued to each other, and I still have people telling stories where when that our race was coming up, like everybody went up because they knew that it was going to be a great race, and then, JD would come out and spend, a week at a time or more with my brother and I, and our buddy Jacob Lehman would come out with us. Jacob was a really talented rider as well, but they would just bring their 100s down and bring their race bikes down, and we would just beat up on each other on 100s all day long. We'd go up in the woods. There's a bunch of trails. We go up in the logging roads, ride on the trails, and beat around the property on the 100s. And then my dad would get home at night, and we'd water the track, and Dad would grade the track, and then we'd ride the big bikes in the evening. And just us just being able to ride with each other as much as we did, and then race with each other on the weekends, definitely pushed both of our levels to push both of us to the next level, for sure. And then that was all the way up through the pro ranks too, because our first 2 years in the pro, when we went pro in the pro singles for American Flat Track, then we were stuck to each other again. JD had gone road racing by then, so he wasn't doing every single round, but when he would come back, he knew that you were going to be, he would be one of the guys to beat for sure. So yeah, that definitely helped. And then having guys like Sammy and Jethro and Joe Kopp and a handful of other good national number riders from Washington, but specifically Joe Kopp and Sammy, like they started letting us ride in the pro class at 14 in the Pacific Northwest at some of these indoor short tracks. So like if you go to an indoor short track, especially back in those days when Slammin' Sammy became Slammin' Sammy, it's like you better be watching your back and be on the gas, because if you leave the door open, or even if you don't leave the door open, if he has a chance, he's coming through. So learning basically riding against him, and kind of learning that aggression, and not even really learning that aggression, because heck, JD and Jacob, my brother and I, was like, heck, we beat up on each other on 100s and whatnot since we were kids. But it was kind of like we were kind of born and bred into doing that. But it was like as soon as we were able to ride with the next level riders, we were ready for it. But it just but then when we did finally get to the pro ranks, it wasn't like, oh my God, we don't belong here. Like, no, we knew that we belonged there, and it wasn't anything new to us. So like it was, I think having that level of riders and that level of aggression since we were kids, it definitely helped us big time.
Dude, that's what an amazing story, Brad. Growing up with JD and Sammy and all these other legends of the sport, such as yourself. It's what a beautiful childhood, right? What great memories, and yeah, it's something to be proud of for sure. Not many people I know grew up racing with a bunch of legends such as them. And iron always sharpens iron, right? And when you have good friends and especially an older brother, right, that he's first and foremost you want to beat up on. Um, yeah, I mean it's just facts, right? So I have a little brother. He's 8 years younger than me, and he was always really competitive with me growing up. He always wanted to be the best, and of course, I would let him win, right, just to make him be like, "Yeah, I told you I beat you, I beat you." And I was just
Yeah,
proud. Yeah, I was proud too that he put in so much effort and to wanting to be just like me, but better than me, right?
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is good. Same thing with you and your brother, right? You always wanted to beat him because you looked up to him, even though he was your brother. And brothers, you have those fights too as well, right? Let's just be
Oh
honest,
yeah.
man. And
Yeah,
but that's just
big
part of
time.
life and growing up, and figuring it all out together. So, man, dude, that's what a story, Brad. So moving forward, going into the amateurs and then winning a bunch of titles, and then first year in the pro. What was it like winning your first season and your first championship? Walk me through that.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty surreal, and didn't really know what to expect at all. I mean, when it was a good time to go pro because 2009 was actually the first year that AMA Pro Racing started the pro single class, where like it had that feeder class. So it used to just be the Grand National Expert class, and there was only one class, a Premier class, and you didn't really have that feeder class. So that was when they started, riding just the DTX bikes at all the nationals, and we had that feeder class where we could travel around, ride all the same racetracks as the experts, and get that experience. So yeah, it was a great year to be starting out. So I turned 16. My birthday is coming up on the 18th of this month. So, it's not very long before Daytona. So I think I turned 16 12 days before my first pro race. So I was, just barely, legal to turn pro before Daytona. And we get down, it was the last national that they had at Municipal Stadium before they moved to the short track that's outside turn one of the International Speedway now, which that was a super cool racetrack. I think everybody agrees that Municipal is better than the track that we have now. So it was cool to be able to say that I raced that, at least one time. But there was some riders that were, a couple years older than me that had been, racing in the pro ranks for a couple years, but the majority of them, like James Rispoli, Jeffrey Carver, JD, Cale Coltman, Austin Greenland. There's, pretty much all of them I grew up racing with at the amateur nationals, so but at the same time, I still didn't know exactly where I was going to stack up. And went out the very first night. I didn't qualify that well. I think I started on the second row of the main event, but I ended up working my way through, and I won my very first pro race at Daytona. So yeah, that was cool. That was really cool to say that I won my very first pro race, and my the very first ever pro single for an AMA Pro Racing. So yeah, that was really neat. And then the second night came back and got second. James Rispoli won and went out of there with a pretty healthy points lead. And I remember my dad going, I was like, well, we were just going to do Daytona, see how you did, and kind of, maybe do a couple more races throughout the year. But it's like, well, since you came out of here with like a 15, I forget how big a points lead it was, but it was a pretty big points lead. It's like, you got a healthy points lead. I guess that means that we're going to the next one. And I never lost the points lead the rest of the year. And I think I podiumed. There was only 13 races that year. It was a pretty short season that year, but I podiumed 9 out of the 13 races, and I wrapped up the championship with one race left on the season. So yeah, we did good. We did really good. And
I would
yeah,
say, Brad. Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, that was cool, really cool, and I was able to ride some outlaw races as well. I stayed back in the Midwest. A lot of the races are all back here in the Midwest or the East Coast more so than the West Coast, being from Washington. So I stayed in in the Midwest a lot, and I got to ride a lot of outlaw races with other top riders, and that helped a lot, and just got to see a lot of the country and meet a lot of new people, and yeah, that was awesome. So that was first year, first wins, first championship. Came out swinging, really.
Hard to top that, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that. So with saying all that, following that second year, going into your second year, did that elevate your expectations coming in?
Yeah, well, the second year I really wanted to move up to the next class. I didn't want to stay in the singles class. I'm like, hey, I want to continue climbing up the ladder. I want to get on a twin, because that was the time, where we were just riding 450s, and I only rode a twin like one other time. I actually got a picture up here on the wall. A good friend of mine has had an XR 750, an old Mert Lawwell chassis XR, and he let me ride it at a practice day at Castle Rock when I was only 14. So I rode an XR 750 for the first time when I was 14. So that as we went back to like riding the next biggest bike and getting on things and just getting that experience at a young level, that definitely helped. And I rode some old Triumphs. So like I knew that I could, and I love that XR. I remember being intimidated by it. Like, oh my God, this 750, this thing's big. Like what, I thought it was going to be hard to ride. And then I found out in about 2 laps that, okay, this bike is really easy to ride. And it was like, I liked it better than my 450s. And like an XR still to this day is, that with a Rotax is the most forgiving motorcycle I've ever rode. But so yeah, I wanted to move up to the next class, but there wasn't a ton of support in the sport back then. It's always hard. It's still hard, for guys to get support. But especially as a young kid that really hasn't earned his stripes yet. Even though I won the first championship on a 450, but nobody had seen me on a twin yet and knew how I was going to progress, and I was looking for a ride on a twin. We weren't going to be able to afford, buying a couple $20,000 XR 750s and keep them running and do the, go to the races. So I wasn't able to find a ride on a twin. So I just decided to stay in the singles class for another year and try to, redeem the #1 plate. So went in 2010, stayed in the singles class, had a little bit of bad luck that year, had a couple, mishap crashes that kind of got me back in the points, right at the beginning of the season. And Jeffrey Carver was on the gas big time that year. He came out swinging and had a pretty good points lead at the beginning, and got myself into second, but it was like he always had like a 15 to 20 point buffer on me, and it was like I would win one weekend and then he would win the next weekend, and then we were kind of like both on the podium, but it was like, even though I was like, doing really well, it's like if Jeffrey's always on the podium with you, you're like, you're never going to make enough points to be able to make it back up on him. But that was a cool year though, where they actually allowed the top 10 riders from the previous year get a provisional license to ride in the expert class on twins, so you could get like the seat time on a twin and get that experience. Kind of a reason why I didn't get one is nobody ever seen me on a twin before to see what I could do, if I would even be safe on a twin. So they gave a provisional license to the top 10 riders from the previous year to ride 3 nationals. And it was actually Nicole Chez's dad, well, Nicole Chez at the time. So Jared Mee's wife, Nicole, she's a badass racer, or was a badass racer. And her dad, Mark, was after I won Lima in 2010. He the very next weekend was a race in I-96 in Lake Odessa, Michigan, only about an hour and a half from where I live now. And Mark was always super nice to me. Like I remember, going to the pit area, and he's like, "Hey, Baker, good luck today, man." I'm like, hey, thanks, Mark. and he'd go. I just remember after the national, I spanked him that night at Lima, and we were pitted right next to Nicole, and I remember him saying, "Hey, Baker, you got a twin ride for next weekend?" I'm like, no, man, I've been looking. Nobody's giving me anything. He's like, how'd you like to ride an XR 750? I'm like, I'd love to ride an XR 750. He's like, wow, well, let me talk with Nicole, but I think you could ride her backup bike there. And yeah, ended up riding her backup bike. And I first qualifying session, I qualified second. And everybody was like, all right, well, I guess Baker can ride a twin, and I ended up, it was actually cool. I got the qualifying time somewhere, and Joe Kopp was first, I was second, and Jethro was third. It was cool. Like my two, childhood heroes, growing up in Washington State, and my first qualifying session, were 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty neat, So, but I ended up getting second that night in the singles class behind Jeffrey, and I won the semi. I had a transfer spot in the heat race, and I almost high-sided the thing coming off of 4. I probably got so excited that I was in a transfer spot that I goosed her up a little too much, and ended up going to the semi. But then a good friend of mine, his name was Luke Goff from Australia. He passed him for the lead, and I won the semi, so that was cool to go stand up on the podium with twin, and ended up 12th that night. I just remember going down the backstretch after the checkered flag, and I could barely like get my grip off the left hand. Like I had to really force, I was death gripping that thing so much where I couldn't even barely open my hands at the end, because I obviously wasn't training enough to be able to ride 2 main events back to back. And I found out then, I'm like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I gotta start working out a little bit more, riding a little bit more. But that was super cool. Then we did 2 more races that year. Actually, the very next one was the first time I rode for the Dodge brothers. That was the team that I won the Grand National Championship for in 2013. So the bike that I actually won my first national on at Hagerstown in 2013 and wrapped up the championship that night at Calistoga, that bike was brand new, never been rode. They got it together at 4:00 in the morning and took it to the racetrack. And Stevie Bonzi was my teammate that night. Stevie actually won his first national that night at Calistoga, and then I got 10th on the other bike. And so that was my first race with the Dodge brothers. Then I did the other race in Arizona on a mile. That was my first national on a twin on a mile, and made that one. So I was the only rider in the pro single class to make a main event on a twin that year, and I made all 3. So yeah, that was pretty cool too. Didn't get the championship that year. Jeffrey beat me to the championship, but making all 3 of those twin main events and getting in the top 10 there at Calistoga was definitely my highlights for sure.
And it's when you meet growing up, I've did a bunch of road races were my heroes, right? And when you finally get to meet them, typical fan comes up to the track, Brad, they see, they're like, oh my God, it's Brad Baker. Can I get a picture and an autograph? You're like, sure, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll have somebody like me that comes along, that's a huge fan. And I'll say, dude, awesome weekend. I'm really enjoying myself. What's for dinner tonight? And you just kind of look at me like, wait, what? I don't normally ask. Yeah, well, because I want to have a genuine conversation with you, right? Obviously, I'm a fan. I already know your history and your past, and obviously, I'm there at the race weekend, right? I wanted to approach all my people that I looked up to in racing in a different way, to where I get their mind off whatever they're going through that weekend, whether they're having a great weekend or it's a shitty weekend or they're just trying to figure something out. And I feel like if I can connect to them on a different level than everybody else there, I would hope that it kind of overcomes a little bit of that mental state that they're going through, because it breaks them. Yeah, it breaks them away
back to the weekend. Yeah.
Right. And I would always get that look. They're like, What? I'm like, yeah, man,
Why
what's
do you
for dinner
care?
tonight? Yeah, I'm like, bro, blah blah blah. And then what that does, Brad, is it sparks this whole other conversation. And next thing you know, we're sitting there just doing this, and then his manager comes by and is like, dude, we gotta go. He's like, oh man, I'll see you later. It's that whole connections thing. And then you realize they're just normal humans like me. They put on their pants just like me. They're down to earth. They have this special gift where they're gods of speed. Best way to put it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's at the end of the day, hey, we're all just, regular human beings, put our pants on one leg at a time, and we just we might not be completely normal, because I think all of us racers have a little bit of a screw loose. And but you know what I'm saying. I mean, I totally agree with you, and that's what you learn. It doesn't matter all the way to the top level of MotoGP. These guys they're just regular people. They just love motorcycles, and love to spend time with their friends, and enjoy the passion just like we do. Just some of us, some of them, happen to beat us a little bit better and be a little bit more fortunate to maybe make a living doing it, but at the end of the day, we all started doing it and still really do it for the same reason, for sure.
Yeah, it speaks volumes of how much love people put into this sport, and they give everything for it. That's why I always say, Brad, and I've said this 100 million times, man, motorcycles pick us. We don't pick motorcycles. And it's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. I actually want to get a couple of these comments right now. We got my buddy Chris Daniels. What's up, Chris? He says, yo, Brad. Hi,
Hey.
Chris. Where's my yo at? I'm not cool. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. What's up, Chris? How you doing, man? I just talked with Brian the other day. So Brian Bartlow's good friend of mine, and Chris helps him out a lot. So yeah, good to hear from you, Chris. Hope to see you soon, man.
Absolutely, man. Me too, Chris. Me too, buddy. And then we got Randy. What is up, Randy? He says, awesome story, Brad. Legendary bullet. Yes, he is.
Right on. Thanks, Randy. Hey, man, good to hear from you.
The next one is a good buddy of mine. He's BSB legend. His name is Luca Allen. He actually just announced today that he will be racing in Moto America this year, which I'm super excited about. He says, what's up? And then he says, loving this pod, Chris. Thanks, mate, for tuning in. Brad Baker, I don't know if you know him. Look him up. Go watch some YouTube videos. He's an absolute legend of the flat track world for sure.
What's up, Luke? I'll be at a couple Moto America races this year. I'll come look you up, man.
Absolutely. And I'll yeah, dude, I will. I'll actually be with Brad. We're going to link up in Texas too. And hopefully we'll be able to hit some of the same Moto America. And I would love to introduce you to. He's absolutely awesome for sure.
Yeah.
And then we got Glenn Scott. What is up, Glenn? He says, great pod and happy birthday, Brad.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Hope to see you at a race this year.
Absolutely. Chris says, good to see you guys. It's always good to hear from you, Chris. Absolutely.
Great guy.
And then I haven't met him yet. I can't wait to actually meet Chris. Me and him's been talking back and forth for quite some time on Facebook and Messenger. So
he has a lot of passion for racing and helping out with schools and whatnot. Chris is a good guy.
And that's imperative to help our sport grow too. Teaching the youth of the future legends of our sport, as I always say, whether it's dirt bike, flat track, whatever. It's good to have good people. Yeah.
Got to have that next generation.
Got to, man. We got to.
Hey,
and then we got Mom. What is up, Mom? She says, always so proud of you, son. Absolutely. So, question from Mom, because me getting into motorcycles, absolutely love her, Mom, right? And
Mom had her birthday 2 days ago.
Dude, happy birthday, Mom. I hope your day was as proper mega as you. Oh, look at that. There you go. Yeah. So growing up, me getting into bikes, my mom was always like, absolutely not, right? Was your mom the same way with you?
Oh no, my mom was super supportive. I mean, she was definitely nervous, we'll put it that way. Like she would have a front row view of the racetrack, because like literally the racetrack was in our front yard, not our backyard. And I remember her saying, she's like, yeah, I you know, I want to look out there very often. You know, I want if they stopped, if the motors stopped, then I'd look out and go like, all right, they're okay, you know. But you know, which I totally can only imagine what that feels like, because I know what I feel like watching my brother. You know, like a lot of my best friends are racers, you know, and I get nervous when they're riding, but I don't get the same nervous as like when my brother was racing. You know, like when it's your blood, it's different. So I can only imagine what it's like for a mom or any of the moms, you know, watching their kids out there. But she never did try to hold us back. Like she was super supportive from the get go, and you know, she was, you know, I mean, she was washing log trucks, washing leathers, you know, helping drive. You know, she was the one that had to balance the checkbook to make sure that we were able to afford to go racing. You know, and that's not easy when you're, you know, got a self-employed log trucker does pretty well, but you know, to afford everything that we, you know, needed to go racing, it's not easy. You know, as everybody knows, it's an expensive sport. So you know, mom had to you know, she was the one that had, you know, the Buick and the Chrysler that we picked up for $1,000 or less at the auction, while Scott and I had, you know, 3 or 4 or more brand new race bikes. You know, it's like that was, you know, she made a lot of sacrifices, as do, you know, all the moms in the sport, you know. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of, you know, credit always goes to the dads, but you know, definitely you never can forget about mom, because she was there just as much as well.
Oh, well, listen, 100%. And with saying that, you know, it's moms always want the best for their kids. They just want to see you happy. And me being a parent, you know, I never understood. You know, my mom be like, so when I turned 16, I bought a brand new motorcycle. I didn't buy a car, Brad. I wanted a bike, man. Forget the car, right?
Yeah.
And my mom would be, I'd come home at 3 o'clock in the morning. My mom be up out in the garage smoking cigarettes with drinking a glass of wine. And I'm like, what are you still doing up, mom? She was like, I was just so worried about you out there. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Now that you're home, I can go to sleep finally. And it never clicked until I had my own son, right? Now he's
Yeah,
12.
oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I told my mom the other day, I said, I totally get it, mom. She said, you get what? I said, all the times you would worry about me, you know, riding bikes. She's like, honey, that's never going to stop. I still worry about you riding that bike, but I see how happy it makes you. I can see that you actually know how to ride, and I would never, you know, want to come in between that. So, but I'm always going to be nervous until I know you're home safe, right? Even to this day, she's like, call me when you get home, Brad. If dude, bro, I'll be home. I'll be like, look, mom, I'll be home at 5:30. Let's just say, right? If I
Yeah.
don't text her by 5:32, my phone is ringing off the hook.
You said 5:30.
Yeah. Are you okay? Like, we had this snowstorm. She calls me last night. She's like, are you going to work tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, mom, I got to work, right? I got bills to pay. She's like, well, it's going to be icy in the morning. I was like, mom, I get it. So when I got to work, I had to text my mom, I don't know if you're still asleep or not, but when you wake up and you get this, I love you, and I made it to work safe, and the roads are perfectly fine. So I don't want you to worry. So yeah, it's
That's a woman thing, which is good, you know. Like that's like, I think us men, we don't worry enough, you know. Whether it's, you know, my wife the same, my grandma, my mom, my mother-in-law, yeah, it's like that's women are in our lives to take care of us and to worry about us for sure.
absolutely, and to feed us real good, right? Let's just be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, exactly. You can't never go starving.
No, not with mom or grandma around, and that's for sure on
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Luca Allen says, for sure, let's link up. Dude, Luca, we're absolutely going to link up. Me, you, and Brad for sure. And then we got Rhonda. What is up, Rhonda? She says, what do you have going on this year? Do you have some races planned that you are going to, but are you working on any teams this year?
Well, hi Rhonda. It's great to hear from you. Congrats to you and Dave on retirement. I'm sure you guys are enjoying that, yeah, and you definitely deserve it. And congrats on picking up Justin and Selmy. He's a great kid. Known his grew up racing with his brothers in Lodi, and got to help him for the last couple of years now. He's an awesome kid. So I hope you guys have a lot of fun with him. Far as helping out any teams and whatnot, I'm not helping out any like specific teams. I'm gonna most likely bring Ferran Cardus over for Peoria at least. Get him over on my 450s. But far as helping riders, I don't really have any teams that I'm working for, and I'll be at some races. I'm still part of Back on Track, the Injured Riders charity, so I'll be at some Moto America races, maybe AFT races representing them, and then gonna put on one half-mile event up here in Michigan in Croswell, which is only like half hour from Port Huron, only about 3.5-4 hours from you guys. So if you have nothing going on I guess it's September 20th, you guys should make your way through Canada and come have some fun on a Cushion half mile. So we'll be doing that on September 20th, and probably putting on some riding schools. Go down to Harpster in Ohio. I want to put on a Cushion half mile school this year, and maybe go down to Texas and put on one with my buddy Jacob Lehman. And that's about it, really. Little light on the racing front compared to previous years, but we'll always be doing something. I'll see you guys at a race at some point this year.
I love it, man. I love it. And so a buddy of mine, Alan Maddock, he says,
Hey, Alan.
Sorry. Yep. He says, I love Brad Baker, bro. We all do. Absolutely.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, Alan's an awesome dude. That's the first guy I see every time I go to the Springfield Mile, as he lets me in through the tunnel. So Alan always bright, makes the day start off good at Springfield.
I love it, man. I love it. He says, see you at Peoria.
Sweet, man. We'll be there.
Rhonda says, good date. We will put it on the calendar. Proper mega.
Awesome.
Rhonda,
sounds good, guys.
Say. Absolutely, man. So look, Brad, run us through a typical like race weekend at a flat track event.
It's a long day at the racetrack, as we all know. It's maybe not as long as a road racing weekend, because you guys, put 1 day, 3 days, more like it. But we get there usually, gates open, our paddock opens at 10 or so, I'd say, and get in. Everybody's getting a lot of people are in line well before that, so they can be ready to go right when the gates open. But everybody gets parked, gets unloaded, gets their pit set up. Everybody, some people might have some bike work that they still need to do. Go through tech inspection, get the bike teched. Obviously they're working on the racetrack, getting the racetrack in shape. For me now, like going to the races, I just try to kind of make my rounds as much as I can. A lot of my best friends are still at the races, so I go, try to lend a hand with anybody, that I can, whether it's just a word of advice. A lot of people come to me just if, whether they know the answer or not, they kind of just want maybe a little reassurance to think that if I'm on the same page as them, that then they stop second guessing what they're doing, it's cool to talk with everybody, and especially the up and coming kids like Justin I was talking about. There's a few others that I help. Those are the ones that I really enjoy working with and talking to, just because there's more that I can help them with. Like I was helping out Briar Bauman there for Briar and Bronson Bauman for 2-3 years after my injury, and Briar on a lot of days was better than me. It's like he was one of the guys to beat. So but there was if I could just give him another extra 1 or 2% in a race day, sometimes that might have been the extra 1 or 2% that he needed to win. So then when racing gets going, then it's full gas for everybody. It's like a lot of people, it's like, especially the mechanics, like the only time they leave the pit area is to go watch their rider. The rest of the time, they're in the pits wrenching. And I kind of forget about that. Like now, like when I go to the races, like I get a lot more freedom to be able to make it around and talk to everybody and watch some racing and whatnot. And then I kind of got to remember, like, man, back when I was racing before, like I didn't watch any of those races. Like the only time that I was up on the track was when I was on the track. It's like I might go up and watch a race here and there. It's like, but most of the time, you're focused, laser locked on what you're doing and what you're doing only, and what everybody else is doing, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. So it's a little bit more enjoyable. I wouldn't say more enjoyable in a different way. Being at the track, just being able to see more people and see more of the racing, and just be able to give feedback to anybody where I can.
It's man, and having somebody like you, always around, working with the future legends of the sport is very important. And it's awesome to see you do that, giving back, everything that sport's given to you too as well. It's
I appreciate that. Yeah,
man. It's dude, bro. Everybody looks up to you, dude. I'm telling you, I hear it all the time. Ever since I reached out to you and I started to, dude, I get Brad, and everybody's like, I've had so many messages like, I can't believe you're really getting Brad the Bullet Baker on your podcast, blah, 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 blah. It's dude, I'm telling you, you are an absolute legend. And there's so many people in the world that absolutely love you and are so grateful in our lifetime to watch a legend such as yourself give us all those memories and emotions that you have given us. And it's just absolutely amazing to see you, still highly involved, being everything that's happened in the sport. It's truly amazing. It just speaks volumes of the character you really are. So
thanks, brother. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's when you said that motorcycles pick you, I think that's a true statement. And when they pick you, it's like it gets in your blood, and there's really no getting rid of it, man. It's it's still what I love. It's still what I follow. It's like so.
What's
Hey there.
up?
How's it
what's
going?
up, Rossi? Say hi to Brad.
What's up?
Are you really gonna come in here and play your video game while I'm on my podcast? Look, he was in here playing his game on his iPad. Watching
Nice.
my podcast.
Hey,
That's awesome. Well, look, put it right here.
I like
There
your
you go.
shirt.
fun.
You got the L's
I
hanging out.
spent all my Robux on
Brad says he likes your shirt.
Thanks.
Yeah, he elf
Look,
on the show. He's an elf now.
This character right
Yeah.
here. Hold on, let me just do your podcast.
All right.
I'm gonna show. I'm gonna show you. This.
Dude, my son always bust up here every podcast, Brad. But this is what I love, man. It's
It's like
it's real and it's raw. It's real life,
for sure.
it.
It's like, hey, I don't care about your podcast, Dad.
Yeah,
You got video
it's me.
games.
Bro, I got video games to do. What are you doing,
Look how much I spent.
bro? High five.
$699. I was
Love
gonna
it.
get this one, which is only 700. But look,
This guy right
It's
here,
like-
Brad.
my friend said this one was cooler, but I said yeah. I wanted
He's
it.
showing me his
I
characters
bought
that
the
he
character for $699.
That guy's bad. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
got. Shoot, no, I ain't trying to mess with him neither.
And look how fast.
Oh, that's
And look,
awesome.
if So look, you can run.
Let's see. Alan Maddox says, I don't know why I keep wanting to put a D in there, Matlock. I'm sorry. He says, a legend, no doubt. Much respect always. Absolutely. Listen, Brad,
Appreciate you,
we're
brother.
dude, we're almost an hour into this. I told you that this is going to go by so quick. I want to transition
yeah.
to all my personal questions. I wrote down, where we stopped at. So just stay on with me after this. We're going to go ahead and schedule our part 2 to this conversation.
All right,
But
cool, brother.
this right here is one of my favorite parts of the podcast, Brad, is where like I said, when I go to the track and I meet, all the legends of the sport, I ask them real down to earth questions, said all these motorcycle questions. And when I took over this podcast, I thought it was important for me to bring that element into the podcast. So when people listen to it and you're a hero of many people, right, they get to connect to you on this personal level, instead of all the motorcycle talk. Right. Let's see. I got to get to Rhonda real quick. She says, motorcycle community is family first. Brad is a great ambassador for a sport. 100%.
Thanks, Rhonda. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Mommy's hollering for you. You hear mommy hollering for you? I heard her with my headphones on.
I know. Look, watch.
He said, I know, but hold on.
Look how fast.
Hey, when boss calls, you
So
better
if I
go.
hold down circle,
Bro, when boss calls, you better go. Let me see real quick.
I go like that if I hold on circle. But watch when I hold trigger.
Let me see. You're flying like Superman, man.
Yeah, it's Robosonic.
That Robo Sonic. I like it, Rossi. That's super
Spent all
cool.
my Robux on this jank.
Uh,
Love it.
So, first question I usually like to ask, and I said this earlier, bro, what's for dinner tonight?
Well, I actually just had dinner before we got on here, and I was gonna make venison burgers. So like I do a lot of hunting, and I love my wife and I love venison meat. But the venison is like the venison burgers mixed like it's like mixed like 25% pork because it has to have some fat in it. Like venison's so lean, yeah. So it's like that's a little a little bit of pork in it that adds some fat. But so yeah, I was gonna make venison bacon burgers. So I was gonna have some sautéed mushrooms and onions, some bacon. Put the burgers on the got a Pit Boss grill. Don't You can be a smoker or a grill, but use Pit Boss. And then I was gonna put some sweet potatoes in the air fryer. Bristol loves the sweet potatoes, so the sweet potatoes are somewhat for her too. But that's what I was gonna make. But since Kelsey was getting home at 6 from work, my wife Kelsey was getting home at 6, and we were starting at 6. It was like was kind of the pod kind of messed up with the time for dinner, so I ended up just door dashing Applebee's, and I got chicken breast, garlic mashed potatoes, and broccoli. And Kelsey got the Tex-Mex shrimp irresistible. So we were on the DoorDash Applebee's program tonight.
I love it, man. I get cooking from my mom. That's where my love of cooking comes from. And growing up, not really cooking, and then this big weight loss thing I've been on, dude. I've been just cooking my butt off, and now I go to restaurants,
Awesome.
bro, or on DoorDash, right? I'm sitting there eating, and I'm like, man, I can make this better myself, right? But we always don't have the time to do it. You know what I'm saying? So.
Sure, that's it. Yeah, no, the DoorDash and is pretty convenient. I'm glad that we live in a town that has it because we don't. It's usually maybe once a week, and it's usually when we have something like this going on where it's like, hey, we just get something quick that way, don't have enough time to cook. But it's definitely convenient for sure. But I hear you on the cooking side, man. It's like there's nothing better than a nice home cooked meal for sure.
And it's crazy though, because me and my wife were kind of total opposites. I love full flavor garlic and hot sauce and all this. My wife is plain Jane. She's just like, I want a burger with cheese on it and some mayonnaise. I'm like, I gotta have tomatoes and onions and pickles and jalapenos and all that good stuff, right? So I find myself
that
cooking. Sorry,
for two people, yeah.
but
Yeah.
and then my son, on the other hand, he's like, well, I just want chicken nuggets or ramen noodles. I'm like, there's more food in the world than chicken nuggets and ramen noodles.
Yeah, it's like, dude, we need some nutrition here. Come on.
This is his pride. He says, well, there's also Chick-fil-A. Oh, yeah, but it's chicken, right? So yeah, he's
yeah. So hey, all right. You'll get with it. I think all young kids, they go through that stage until a certain point where they're like, man, what was I thinking back then?
Yeah, it is. It is. Dude, Brad, growing up, with your motorcycles, did you ever name your motorcycles?
I don't think so, man. I guess I was lame and I never did name any bikes. No. I know friends that did. Like Mike Hacker, he had he named his bikes. Yeah, a couple other people did too, but I guess I never did. I always called them girls. I always called them like, yeah, she, like it was like it had to be a girl, It's like, but I never did name them. Guess maybe that would have been better luck if I would have named them.
Well, it's funny you said it because I do the same thing. I always call my bikes a woman and or she, right? And
Yeah.
a buddy of mine's like, well, why you keep calling your bikes a women? I was like, dude, because listen, they are just like women. He's like, I don't understand. It's just a machine. I said, but hold up. You get on one bike, right? And then you see another bike, you're like, oh my God, look how beautiful that bike is, right? Referring to, right? And then you're like,
Yeah.
I got to ride her. And then you get on her, man, her attitude's different. The way you body position on it's different. That just everything's different. It's you got to learn to dance with this woman in a different way than you were used to dancing with your other woman, right? So that's why I
Good analogy.
yes, as
Yeah.
women. So it's yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. So dude, bro, are you a coffee drinker?
I am. I always have to start out the day with a fresh cup for sure.
Absolutely, man. Are you dark coffee or medium roast or?
Yeah, I like actually. So it's crazy to think though. It's like people always think like a dark coffee is like has more caffeine or it has like a, but actually the lighter the roast, the more caffeine because the more like say if you make a dark roast and it has like the more you roast the bean, the more it roast the caffeine action out of it. So like a lighter roast coffee is actually has more caffeine in it. I found that out from a coffee buddy. But so I like kind of like a medium roast because I kind of like that stronger taste to it. Um, but usually like I can drink coffee black. Like I don't mind coffee black, but I usually will put whether it be honey or a little stevia in it, or even my wife got this like oat milk creamer. Just put a little splash of that in there. I don't like getting it to where it looks like milk. I just put a little in there, just enough to taste off like the little bitterness to it, whether it be the honey or the stevia or the oat milk, just enough to be able to take that little bitterness off because it still has to taste like coffee. Because like some of these drinks that you're drinking, it's like, man, that tastes like damn hot cocoa. It don't taste like coffee. It just but yeah, good cup of coffee is a way to start the morning for sure.
That's how I judge my coffee is when I get like a different K cup or whatever. 'Cause my wife's got the K Keurig thing, so I'll be like, yeah, I'll buy this, and I always start off black because that's the true flavor of the coffee, right?
Yeah.
Um, my wife, on the other hand, she'll get coffee and it's like a half a gallon of creamer in there, and I'm like, well, let me try that because the creamer smells good, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's like pure
Yeah,
sugar. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it
It's
absolutely. Um,
yep.
Let me ask you this, Brad, dude. Tell us something we don't know about Brad the Bullet Baker at all.
If you don't know about me. Well, my mom's whole side of the family's from Alaska. So like I'm born and raised in Washington, but my mom and her whole family are from Alaska. That's actually where my mom and dad met, was in Alaska. And my brother was born in Alaska, lived his first 2 years up there. So yeah, probably one of the very few racers that has family that's from Alaska. So some people might not know that. I don't know, man. I'm a pretty straight up guy, really. Like kind of what you see is what you get. I don't, you know, I guess I don't know of any secrets that some people might not know. I mean, I like to, I grew, like I said before, I grew up in, logging company. My dad was a logger, so I grew up, logging, hunting, fishing, riding motorcycles, getting dirty. My high school I say the school because actually where I went to school, the same building that I graduated high school in was the same school that I went to preschool in. So it was K through 12, all one building. I had 28 kids in my graduating class. Some people might not know that. But it was cool having a small school like that because, some of my teachers in elementary school actually moved themselves up through the ranks and they were high school teachers when I got to high school. So I knew them, they knew me, and they knew, my path of racing. They knew that, ever since I was a kid that I've been doing this and I, focused doing it. And as long as I, told them what I was going to be doing ahead of time, got my schoolwork ahead of time, they would let me take off for basically as long as I wanted to be able to go race. And I want to be on truancy. I had a bunch of absences, but they're all excused absences. But so it helped out a lot going to a school like that, and out in the country. And it I definitely, hearing the stories from my buddies that I went to really big schools, I definitely wasn't missing out on anything. We'll put it that way.
Love it, man. Growing up, my mom always used to say, "Man, it takes a village to raise a kid." I'm like, "No, it don't, mom. It's you and my dad, right?" And she's like, "Well, technically, your daddy, because he was a fighter pilot, he still flew jets off the aircraft. He's like, well,
Yeah.
technically, he's gone 9 months out of the year, so technically, it's me raising you, right? But then when I get older and I have a kid and being in road racing and track days, watching all the younger future legends of the sport come through, it's absolutely it takes a village to raise a racer too as well, right?
No, it definitely does, man. I mean, I probably learned more valuable life lessons in the passenger seat of a log truck than I did in school. You know, whether this was different types of trees and different types of dirt and racing lines and measurements and different types of oils, and you just didn't name it. This stuff that my dad taught me while we were hauling logs together. But yeah, then it just goes from my mom, my grandma to, all the different, people that were in my life growing up. Like you said, it definitely, takes a big group of awesome people to raise a kid for sure.
100%. What's saying that, Brad? What's your worst habit?
Oh, worst habit. Man. You should have gave me these questions so I could have thought about them.
Well, this is the whole point. This is the whole point of a live raw podcast, man.
Yeah, man. I should have. I mean, man, worst habit.
Like me, okay.
I don't know. Maybe putting too much food in my mouth at once. My wife hates it. I just loved having a big mouthful of food. I hate just taking little niblets and whatnot. But man, if I take a big old bite, sometimes I'm. No. My wife's like, that's gross, and I'm like, you're probably right. But
it's so good. Yeah,
it's so good.
What are you talking about? But my wife says the same thing. She's like, dude, you eat entirely. Nobody's taking your food, Chris. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, dude, you 3 bites, you're done with your whole plate. I was like, but it was good. You got it all over your face. I'm like,
that should be a compliment.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. What's your favorite holiday, bro?
Oh, I like Christmas, man. Christmas is a good one, man. It's just because it's like a whole month. It's not just the day. It's the whole Christmas vibe. From basically Thanksgiving until Christmas, but even just till New Year's, that whole month of December is just a good vibe, so I'd say Christmas is probably my favorite. Halloween's cool too. I like Halloween, like October, whole month of October is cool, and seeing kids dress up and all the parties and whatnot. Like, I think Halloween and Christmas would be probably the two that I like the most.
Listen, I'm the same boat. I love Halloween. I love Christmas. But as I had my son and he keeps growing up, Christmas for me just gets more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. But I still love it, right? But yeah, dude, I feel it. I love horror movies and Halloween. I love to dress up and all that cool stuff. So yeah, it's
for
absolutely,
sure.
Man. Dude, Brad, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Do you listen to any audiobooks or read?
I don't. I listen to a lot of like podcasts, like whether it be Joe Rogan or Pat Bet David and stuff like that. But I've been wanting to get into audiobooks a lot more though. Like I really want. I should read the book, but I think Think and Grow Rich, they got a movie out for it now, and I think you can get that book in audio. But that's I think a really good book for anybody that has a entrepreneur side to read, and I haven't read it, so because I don't know, I like reading, but like, man, it just takes so much time. It's like I feel like if I can sit down and watch an hour of movie or an hour and a half movie, like I can get that done. So but to your original deal, I don't, but I think I could get into it for sure.
Yeah, I listen to a buttload of audio books. If I read, other than my motorcycle shop manuals, to be honest, but if I sit down and I read a book, I'd be 20 minutes into it, I'm out, right? It's like a sleeping aid for me. It's I think for me though, Brad, since audiobooks come out and started to be a big thing, it's like when you listen to it, man, you pretty much create it in your mind. You create the outfits, you create what they're doing, even though they're telling the story, you set the scene the way you want to see the scene, right? Instead of watching it on the big screen and Cameron Hayes or whatever is painting his vision of this movie.
Your imagination's going,
yeah. So it kind of makes it even more. It makes it better. I was gonna say more better, but you can't. It's more better.
It's more better.
Right? It's more better for you. So yeah, it's Yeah, man. So speaking of podcasts, man, what podcasts do you listen to that you can recommend to people listening?
Like I said, like I listen to a lot of Rogan. I really like Pat Bet David. I think he has a lot of good insight. Patrick Bet David, he's a good one. And then, when it comes for racing, I think the Gypsy Tales podcast for motocross, it's like they can get a lot, obviously you get a lot of the really good riders on there. So that's a good one. And then Tank Slapping podcast for flat track, with Corey and Eric, those guys do a pretty good job. And then, Corbett Carlisle's doing one now as well. Sideways podcast, him and Scotty Taylor, they're doing a pretty good job. There's a couple guys, then you got Scotty Dubler with Off the Groove podcast all those are all the flat track ones, but it's good to see more and more people doing podcasts, such as yourself, because the sport, whether it's flat track or road racing or motocross or whatever, we need all the media that we can, for sure. And I'm sure there's some other ones out there, man. It's just like I love listening to them when I'm driving. Like I look forward to a road trip. Like, man, all I got to do is sit here and steer and have a great view and listen to a sweet podcast. Like, it sounds great, Yeah.
Dude, you don't listen to Pin the Gas podcast, Brad?
Well, Pin the Gas. Sorry, brother. Well, hey, I gave you the plug at the beginning. Pin the Gas.
I know. Sure. I'm just messing with you, man. Every time I ask that question, I'm like, bro, what about me, man? You don't listen to my podcast? I'm just joking with you, man. All those podcasts, dude, I listen to every single one of them. Gypsy Tales, yeah, he's I think for me with Gypsy Tales, he does get a lot of the legends on too, but I think it's more his voice and the way he interacts with his guest, right? It's more of a journey in a story than just sit down. Hey, let me just ask you a bunch of questions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I agree for sure.
So yeah, absolutely. Who's your favorite comedian?
Man, favorite comedian. Man, Kevin Hart's pretty damn funny. There's another guy. I wish. Man, I just Kill Coltman just sent me a skit with him. It was about an ostrich, like the best. What would be the best guard animal that you could have? Like, what do you think? Like, ostrich, man. Like an ostrich. Like this guy, man. I should find what his name is. Let's see if I can go back and find it. But this guy, like, you think about it, like an ostrich can run like 55 miles per hour. So there's nothing that's going to outrun the damn thing. It's tall, so like you got a fence and whatnot. Here's this big ass ostrich just looking over the fence, like anybody coming around, and then like they'll freaking drop kick your ass. It's like they're a mean freaking bird. And Cale said he's seen this guy live, and I've seen his little skits of him, and it's like the dude is Brian Callen.
Brian Callen, yep.
Yeah, Brian Callen. I've just seen skits of him, but I'd like to see him live because, the way that I'll send you this this deal that Kale sent me, but it was hilarious. The guy does a good job. But I'd say like Adam Sandler and Jim Carrey, as far as like actors go, that's not basically like they're comedians, but those are more actor comedians. But those two comedians, when it comes to like movies and whatnot, like I definitely think those they take the cake for sure.
100%. Actually, Chris Daniels has a question for you. He wants to know, where's the best dirt?
Best dirt. Oh man, the best dirt has to be Springfield, Illinois. That Springfield, or like heck, my racetrack. As Chris, you've seen the race. The dirt at my racetrack is pretty damn similar to Springfield, Illinois. But I like Springfield, or Peoria is good. Like around Peoria, all those racetracks around Peoria, whether it be Galesburg or Pekin, it kind of got that red, sandy, topsoilish clay. That's some pretty prime dirt as well. But I'd say Illinois just altogether probably has the best dirt. That grows good crops. It typically makes good racetrack dirt.
Absolutely. Throughout your whole career, Brad, what's the one race that stands out the most in your mind?
I think the Indy Mile 2015, that's my favorite win of my career. That was it was a really good race between Brian Smith, Jared Mees, and I. Kenny Coolbeth was up in there for a little while until his bike broke. And even the weekend before that, we were at the Coin, and it was us four again, but my bike broke. But that was a good one too. But other than my bike broke, but yeah, that was a good race just because, man, the track was killer. It rained all week, so Indy stayed a cushion. Usually it would start out a cushion in practice, and then it would eventually brush off and just be a little groove down around the rail. And I always liked it when you could be, up in the cushion and creating different lines and riding hard, so the track stayed pretty bitching that time where you could ride and go up top, get it turned, square off the corner, connect it, get with the groove. And I was able to find a good line through 3 and 4 where I go way up wide coming in, keep it wide open, get it turned early. And then there was a groove down on the railings. So like I would get it turned early, make the straightaway longer, and I would be pointed towards the groove. And man, as soon as I hit the groove, it was like almost like I'd be spinning, and then as soon as I'd hit the groove, man, the thing would just hook up, and then it would be like the thing would almost like lurch out of my bars, out of bars out of my hands. The thing would hook up so much, But then like Jared and Brian were down following the groove, and so like I would already have a run on them, because I got it turned earlier. I made the straightaway longer, and I'd be coming up on them on speed. And as soon as like we were almost straight up and down on to the straightaway, like I'm coming up on them with speed, and then I'd be getting their draft at the same time. So I'm already coming up with them with this head of steam, and then I sniff their draft. And as soon as I get their draft, man, like I would pull out, I would go by, and I feel like I would blast by them going like 5 miles per hour faster. It's like, and on a mile, like that's huge. Usually you get in the draft, you pull out, and you kind of slowly go by, but me, I was pulling out, and it was like, see you later, and I had a killer line, and it was, and Jared and Brian are, two of the best to ever do it, especially on a mile. And I was, 22-year-old kid, and I schooled them on a mile for the first time, so that was pretty cool for sure.
Unless you're slamming Sammy and he just comes up on the inside and boom, there you go, right?
Yeah, fuck, there's Sam. Well, see you. Hey, dude, what's up?
I'll get you after the race for some cold ones, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be out here in the freaking grandstands picking myself out of the weeds.
Right. Thank you, Sam. No, that's awesome, man. So growing up, Brad, obviously, dude, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Are you a Star Wars fan too as well?
I watched a little bit of Star Wars, Star Trek and stuff when I was younger, but I never really got into the Star Wars, man. I'm sorry.
No, dude, it's good, man. It's good. Are you more of a Marvel or a DC guy, or?
I was kind of like more of an old country Western type guy. Like my dad watched a lot of those, so I think I kind of got into it a lot more too. It's just like the country Westerns and the war movies. I really like a lot of old war movies. Those are pretty good too.
So, what's one Western movie you would recommend to people listening?
Man, I don't know, like necessarily Western movie. Like I like Little House on the Prairie, man. Like the show, like that was a great show. I actually just watched Kevin Costner's Horizon, the first part 1 of Horizon. I don't know if you've seen that movie out, but it was, I wouldn't say a letdown. I thought it was going to be a little bit better than what it was. It's just really slow pace. It's kind of like one of those movies where you're kind of like waiting for it to get going, and then it never really did, But it has like a part 2 and a part 3. So maybe part 2 and part 3 will get going a little bit more. But it definitely did kind of paint the picture of like what it was like being a settler, or a pioneer settling the West. Like, it really, especially now, like where I watched the movie when I was sitting on the airplane, flying to Arizona in this last November. And I'm thinking, man, I'm sitting here with a drink in my hand and sitting back going 600 miles an hour, 40,000 feet in the sky, watching a movie. And here's these freaking pioneers on a covered wagon, rationing their water and their food, trying not to get killed by Indians or catch the plague or something. I'm just thinking, like, wow, like, man, it's crazy how far we've came as, human society, settle in the West and covered wagons compared to, sitting in a, watching a movie going 600 miles per hour, not even thinking about it. Like, I'm glad that I think about it that way, because I think there's a lot of people that just are in their world and don't even really, maybe take things for granted, but that movie, I guess I would recommend it, just because it really did paint the picture of like what it was like, doing that back then, and it was kind of a trip.
It's funny you say that, because I love Western movies. Like, one of my favorite video games all time is Red Dead Redemption 2, man. What a absolute
All right.
proper mega game, right? But when I go I'm getting ready to have surgery on my wrist, and all the times I go get shots or broken bones and all this, I'm like, I would think of, man, if I lived in 1776 or back in the 17 or 16 1800s, they didn't have this medicine. It was take a couple shots of whiskey, put a stick in your mouth, it pass out and endure the pain, right? And I'm like, well, I can absolutely handle this situation, with the little needle and all that. That just helps me.
First, yeah, it's like, hey, don't be a bitch, you'll be all right.
Don't be a pussy, right? Exactly, exactly. So my next question to you is if you could go travel back into any era of time, what era would you travel back to?
Oh man, I mean, I don't think I would travel back too far, just because of the things that we were just talking about, but I think going back to like the 80s and 90s, like that would be a cool era to live in, like the 90s. The 90s, even though, like, hey, I've lived in the 90s, born in 93, but it was, I mean, I remember that era of being a kid, and it seemed like it would have been a really fun era to be an adult in, so, but I think maybe the 80s would even be even a touch more, maybe even the 70s too. If I'd say if you were born in the 70s, like you probably got to live a pretty killer life living through the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in 77, man. I just gave away my age. But yeah, it's
All right, how was it?
I mean, dude, Brad, I don't know. I was like 77 or 78, 70. So I was like, what, 2 years old, 2.5 years old?
Yeah.
In the 80s. But yeah, the early 90s was good. Of course, there was one thing that does stick out to me was people weren't so uptight, man. Of course, the day and age has completely changed to what it used to be. But the colors of like the cars and the motorcycles and everything's so much more vibrant back then. Everything now is it's plain Jane. And
Yeah.
when people made movies back then, it was of course, minus all the CGI, it was just a different era and a different time. So it touched you in a different way than movies do now. Right now, I sit down, I watch a movie, I'm like, I know it's fake, but I can almost see, like, I can visualize the green screen and them doing this and the outtakes and all that, right? Back then, I didn't think of things that way, with the technology, the way it moves, and the, all this behind the scenes shit that we didn't get back then, right? So you was just like, oh my God, it's fucking Darth Vader with the lightsaber. This is real, right? Now it's like, oh man, it's just completely different. So yeah, it was cool growing up in that time for sure, right? I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, for sure, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So listen, if Brad Baker had his own private track day, okay, and you can invite anybody in the world, dead or alive, to your own private track day, Valentina Rossi, George Washington, whoever it is, what's the 3 people you invite to your track day?
I would invite Chad Reed. I like Chad. I got to meet Chad at a MotoGP after party in 2017, and Chad grew up dirt tracking in Australia, and he said, he was like, man, it's like he knew who I was, like he watching the Super Prestigio and whatnot, and like he's a dirt track fan from growing up doing a little bit of it in Australia, he's like, man, I'd like to, it's like, I've always thought about doing a little bit more of it after I retire. And I think that was probably what, 3 years, maybe 4 years or so before he retired. But yeah, I think Chad, I follow him still now. I think Chad's a cool dude. So I think Chad, Valentino would be super cool. Like I got to ride with Valentino at his ranch, and Valentino is just is a awesome guy, super down to earth, and knows how to ride a dirt track bike really well. And him and Chad are good friends too, so I think that would make it really well, a lot of fun. And then who else? Man, only three. That's hard. I guess I got to throw in a dirt tracker in there. It's like a good dirt tracker. I mean, I wish Springer wasn't nearly as old now. It's like, and Springer can still get down. It's like, but I wish if Springer was like 10 years younger when he could really still put in some laps. Like, man, Springer, man, would be cool to have there for sure. And I mean, even now, I think Springer would just be fun, just because I think Valentino and Chad would just be laughing like, man, this, because they definitely know who he is. It's like, and they would get a kick out of him. So we'll throw Springer, man, in there, and just for the laughs, and just because in one lap, I mean, the guy could probably still out put a lap time of all of us if we were just a one lap, qualifying session.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Yeah, it's kind of a broad kind of question, but I like to ask it because it makes you think. There's so many people you want to invite there, but just the top three real quick off the top of the head, right? It's
for sure.
I would, man, dude, it's such a question. Every time I ask it, I think of who I invite. Of course, it'd be Nicky Hayden, Valentino Rossi, straight up off the bat. I'd invite you. It'd be Nicky Hayden, Valentino Rossi, and Brad Baker would be at my private track day. I'd have two road racers. One that, well, actually both of them are also flat track riders too. And then I'd have the legend Brad the Bullet Baker at the flat track, and we would follow you around. I would be, y'all would lap me, but we would follow you around the track, and then you would follow us around on the road race course, right? And
yeah, you said dead or alive, man. Yeah, Nicky would be. So yeah, I never thought. Yeah, it's like, yeah, God bless his soul. Like Nicky, I think Nicky, Chad, Valentino. That'd be a killer day for sure.
Yeah. So real quick story. I know we're almost an hour and 30 minutes. So I only planned on going an hour, man. But
all good, brother.
We'll end this here in a few minutes. But I remember when me and my wife first got together, and I started introduced to my whole motorcycle craziness world, right? The very first time I introduced her to Nicky Hayden, she's like, "Oh my God, who was that?" I said, "That's Nicky Hayden." She says, "He's
beautiful."
Yes, he is so gorgeous. I've never seen him smile. I love him. I said, we all do, girl. We all love Nicky Hayden, right? So yeah, it's
no homo, but yeah, freaking
no homo,
Nicky
man.
was
a
great looking dude.
My celebrity crush. I'm just gonna go on and say it, right? Celebrity crush, hands down.
As a girl, I totally would.
Facts, right? 110%, man. Dude, let me ask you this, dude. If Brad Baker had one superpower, what would the one superpower be?
Man, I'd love to fly. Like you were talking about being an eagle earlier. I was before the pod talking about being an animal, man. Being able to fly, that would be killer.
That would be killer, wouldn't it, man?
It
would. Yes, it would. Well, listen, dude, Brad, this has been a lot of fun. I got so many more notes, so much more to talk about. We're definitely going to do, listen, people, we're going to do several series of this, not just 2 or 3. It's me and Brad go sit down many times and have these conversations. I've actually been taking notes of where I left the conversation off or where I want to pick it back up for next time. Definitely want to talk on, riding on the VR46, riding with the freaking goat himself. But one last question. I'll get to all my shout outs. I'm going to let you end the podcast and then just stay on with me for a minute. We'll go ahead and schedule our part 2 is what advice do you give to all the younger future legends of our sports that want to get in flat track racing? What advice would you give them?
I guess, biggest thing is, be serious, but don't forget to have fun. It's like, we're all doing this because, hey, we want to be the best we can be. But at the end of the day, you got to remember that, hey, we're doing this because we love it. And if you almost make it too serious and you take the fun out of it, then that'll end up, costing you in the long run. If you always remember why you do it, and you'll never look at it as a job or something you have to do. It's something that you always want to do. So there's that. And then, I guess, for the guys that are, kids that are in the pro ranks or going into the pro ranks, is just, taking your physical fitness, and not just for racing, just for life in general. It's like you'll thank yourself later in life for taking care of your body. Like your body is your number one asset, so don't take it lightly. What you put into your body and what you do to your body is, you're gonna pay for it for the rest of your life. So take your physical fitness and what you put into your body seriously. And and then another advice is just your finances is put some money away and have some fun, buy the things that you want to a certain extent, but make sure that you're planning for a rainy day and you're planning for later on down the life, and try to get a financial planner to help you out early in your early years. And because if you wait until you're 30 to get going, you'll always be thinking, man, I should have got started when I was 20, and be thinking back like, man, how much further I could have been ahead if I would have started at 18, 20. It's never too late to start, and it's never too early to start, but definitely the earlier you start, the better, for sure.
Yeah, great advice, man. It's but being young, Brad, let's just be honest, it's hard to get our mental game into that mode, right? we just want this. And growing up, one thing I realized, man, is all this material shit we think we want and we get, at the end of the day, does it make you really happy? Absolutely not. Like for that brief kind of second, and after that it's like, okay, it's cool, whatever, I got it. I'm done with it. So it's
$15,000 stereo that was in my van. I mean, I got some happiness out of it, but at the same time, that 15 grand that's completely gone now would probably be worth $30,000 or $45,000 today if I would have invested it in something, maybe even more. But so if you're gonna pay a lot of money on something, make sure you can pay it off in smiles. My buddy Kevin Anderson, one of my good friends, Kevin Anderson's like, pay it off, and you'll pay it off in smiles. It's like he talked me into buying a Honda Grom one time, and it was like $3,500 or whatnot. I'm like, man, I don't think I'm gonna get enough use out of that. He's like, dude, you'll pay it off in smiles in the first week, trust me. And he was right. He was totally right. So yeah, if you're gonna spend money on something, make sure you're gonna get some enjoyment and use out of it. That's gonna be worth it for sure.
100%. Speaking of that, I'm actually gonna buy me a Honda Grom here pretty soon myself. It's dude, every time I get on my buddies, it's like I have the most fun ever. I'm like, dude, it's smiles for miles is exactly what the I don't Z125 Honda Grom, whatever, man. It's nothing like it in the world.
It's an XR100, but street legal. It's like you can ride it super hard on the street, but you're not really going to get in too much trouble because you can hardly exceed the speed limit in most places on it. But you can have a ton of fun on it for sure.
You can't replace the smiles it puts on your face, that's for sure. And Randy, you are absolutely right, but this also goes to, dude, I think this is racing in general. If you want to get rich, flat track racing or racing in general, you got to start with a bunch of money. I mean, that's just a fact, right? Especially, man, the cost of things now in our sport. But this is a topic we'll definitely touch on our next one.
Want to get rich racing flat track, you got to go using somebody else's pocketbook. It's basically the way, but yeah, you're right though, Randy.
110%. Man, Brad, dude, listen, it's such an honor to sit down with the legend, Brad the Bullet Baker. I'm going to let Brad actually end the podcast like I do all my friends. But first, I need to give all my shout outs. And Brad's absolutely right. You guys want to invest money, get you with a financial advisor. Me, Next Level Financial. I said it at the beginning. My buddy Seth Starnes, that's exactly what he does. He's a racer. He's a track day junkie. He does Next Level Suspension. He's a suspension guy, so he knows all the ins and outs and the financials of what it takes to stay on the track, to buy the tires, to get to the races and all that. So Next Level Financial, big shout out to them. Big shout out to BisonTrack.com for all your leather needs. Chef Eats, man, dude, Brad, he makes the best meals in the world. Normally when we go to a racetrack, it's grills and all this. All you need is a microwave. You throw it in there for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The steak is tender. The chicken is juicy, man. It's super, super good food. He sponsors a lot of racers in our industry, and he's a racer. He's the fastest chef in America. Big shout out to TST Industries. Big shout out to my man Martin and my son started coloring this for me. So big shout out to the Clothing Kings. You guys can go to theclothingkings.co.uk and get all your Pin to Gas merch out there in the UK. Big shout out to my man Eric at Superbike Supply, SFL Mini GP in Jersey and in South Florida, RD Racing, and my man Jake Marsh out in BSB, Vet2 Track, Flying Eyes Optics, 64-degree racing, because Brad, you don't never want to go to the racetrack. On road race sides, I'm sure. Did you guys wear undersuits underneath your guys' leathers, flat track racing?
Yeah. I'd always wear something underneath for sure.
All right, so you don't never want to go to a track with one undersuit. Trust me, you want to bring more undersuits than you do socks and underwear. That is an absolute fact. So Tate actually sent me from 64-degree racing, sent me a well, you can't see it's right there, a custom 2-piece undersuit. It's absolutely amazing. Ghetto Customs for all your custom body work. Carnes Performance in Pennsylvania, KYT Helmets Americas. K-Tech Suspension, my man Birch, Kendall, and Dakari. RTR Ready to Race in North Carolina. Coleman Sports here in Virginia. McLeo Escapes Track and Tour. Road Racing World. I need everybody to go to roadracingworld.com. Donate to their funds, their air fence funds. It's imperative. We don't have the air fences. We're not going road racing or flat track racing for that matter. So sign up, donate. We thank you. Big shout out to STG with Brian Van and Max Van. Big shout out to Chris at Drippin' Wet, REB Graphics, and my buddy Gus Rodeo has one too. It's GRG Graphics. Venom Undersuits. You can go to venomsport.com. My girl Aliki, she's absolutely amazing. She actually gave me Johann's Flogger top. His top for his undersuit, which is freaking. I try to put it on. It's an extra medium. I'm a large. I was like, yeah, I can't put this thing on. So. But I had to try, right? Let's just keep it honest. Big shout out to my man Antley at Racer401 at tippinracing.com. Hyper Naked Leathers, California Superbike School in the UK. Man, listen, thank you guys so much for everybody that tuned in and watched this podcast. I love every single one of you because without you, I would not be able to do this. If you guys have not yet, please go to my YouTube, Spotify. Listen, you guys know the deal. Hit that little ding, 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 ding bell that we all like to hear. I don't make money doing this. This is not something that I sought after I started to make any money. I do it simply because of my love and passion for this sport. Like Brad said earlier, if it turns into a job, then it's like I'm clocking in for work. I already do that. I already have a full-time job. This is my passion away from that full-time job. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor to sit down with the legend, Brad the Bullet Baker. Brad, the floor is all yours, buddy. Tell everybody where they can find you and hit you up on socials and all that good stuff. And look, Brad, my puppy, Princess Fiona, made an appearance in there. There she is.
Hey, Fiona. What's up, pups? Hey there. Say hi to Bristol. Bristol's right here.
Say hi, Bristol. Look, she's looking around. She's like, wait, what?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, we love our pups. That's for sure.
Yes, we do.
Girl. But, well, hey, man, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it big time. Thank you for everybody that tuned in to watch, that engaged. I really appreciate all y'all. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. We'll have to do this again, like I said, part 2. You know, there's a lot more racing stories and things to talk about. But yeah, it was awesome talking with you, Chris, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody that tuned in at the races sometime this year, whether it be a Moto America race or an AFT race or anywhere in between. But yeah, thank you guys, and I appreciate you, Chris.
Man, I appreciate you, and I'm so looking forward to hanging out with you in Texas at the end of March, my friend.
Yeah, same here, man. It'll be fun, big time.
It's going to be a proper mega Willie good time, just like we had today. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor to sit down on this proper mega Willie Wednesday with the legend, Brad the Bullet Baker. We will see you guys next time. All right, Brad, let me end this. Just stay on with me for 1 second, okay?
All right.
Let me end this.
Calling all two-wheel enthusiasts, get ready to rev up your earbuds with Pin the Gas Podcast, the ultimate motorcycle racing podcast, hosted by Chris Simcoe, one of our very own excellent leaders here in Roanoke, Virginia. With expert analysis, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive writer interviews, Pin the Gas podcast delivers the adrenaline rush of the racetrack straight to your ears. Whether you're a diehard fan or a curious newcomer, you'll gain insights that will transform how you watch and understand motorcycle racing. On your favorite podcast app, join Simcoe as he takes you on a high-speed journey through the world of motorcycle racing. Pin the Gas podcast.